there, welcome to BlockXL Artistry. The Badlands, a biome that was in competition against two other biomes for the chance to be updated, and the winning biome would be updated with the features to introduce some new and fresh excitement to the player when visiting that biome. And while the winning biome wasn't the Badlands this time around, if I'm correct, I believe that Mojang has stated that the features that were showcased in these biomes will eventually be added to the game sometime in the future. We just don't know when that will be. So I thought it'd be fun to talk about some of those features and how they might work, starting off with the Badlands. Now, the three features that were showcased in the Badlands animation were the tumbleweed, this fancy new cactus, and the vulture. And before we begin, I'd also like to introduce to you Light Mode. It's basically the counterpart of this video that offers a clean, bright, and vibrant look. Check it out by clicking the info card or the link in the description to watch this video in Light Mode. So let's start this video off with the tumbleweed. In the Badlands update animation, it seems like the tumbleweed almost bumps into Yens because of their reaction to it rolling near them. So I imagine that the tumbleweed will have some sort of collision mechanics, such as bumping into the player, more than likely dealing the same amount of hearts to the player that would be proportional to walking into a berry bush. But I've been thinking about these Badlands features, and how it could be kind of fun to connect some of their functions to each other. So we're going to talk about the vulture for a minute. And in the Badlands pixel animation, Yen said that the vultures are drawn to loot left behind by the player. But this puzzled me a bit, because if you were to lose a battle in the Badlands and respawn way back to where your bed is, more than likely you'd be respawning far away enough from the Badlands that you would probably unload any chunks that you dropped any loot in. And by the time you got back to your items, the likelihood of the vulture interacting with any of your items is somewhat minimized, as it's mainly a foot race back to your items once you've loaded those chunks. But I could be wrong. But if that is the case, let's think of a solution to make this feature more engaging. Let's jump back to the concept of the tumbleweed now. So besides tumbleweeds rolling around in the Badlands and occasionally bumping into you, what if when the tumbleweed rolled into you, not only would it poke you, but also cause you to drop an item, therefore causing you to try to pick up any treasures that you dropped that a nearby vulture might try to take? Maybe once you enter the Badlands, a vulture will begin tracking you and perch on any nearby fancy cactuses in efforts to grab any treasures that you might have dropped. That's why I like this tumbleweed idea, as it makes the likelihood of a vulture being drawn to your loot a bit more likely. But I will say that, how likely is it really that a tumbleweed is going to roll into you? Because in Minecraft, you are oftentimes constantly moving around. So in addition to the tumbleweed possibly being able to hit you, what if the longer amount of time that you spend in the Badlands, the more likely it is that a vulture will try to drop tumbleweeds onto you in attempts to make you drop loot? I feel like these concepts are fun, as it ties some of the tumbleweeds and vultures functionalities together, therefore making these biome features feel more connected, enhancing the Badlands experience overall.
That's actually pretty funny. I'm parked, and it looks like a very small tumbleweed is in the corner of this spot that I'm at. Huh.
So now let's talk a bit about the fancy cactus and what its functionalities might be. So in the Badlands pixel animation, Jens touches the cactus and it kind of pokes him. And that's mostly all the information I got about the fancy cactus from the animation. So this should be interesting, but I will say that the vulture did use the fancy cactus as a place to perch on in the animation with Jens and Agnes. So maybe a fancy cactus might be the place a vulture returns to once it successfully obtained one of your items. Perhaps approaching the vulture when it's perched on a fancy cactus will cause it to fly away, and that would cause the fancy cactus to shoot out spikes. Almost like the fancy cactus has a defense mechanism that it uses whenever it's detecting something interacting with it. Maybe this is something that the vulture knows and even uses to its own benefit. Perhaps to make a vulture drop an item that it's carrying, you could throw a snowball at the vulture, as the Badlands is seemingly a dry place. So a snowball would probably startle a vulture, resulting in it dropping whatever it's carrying. Now back to the cactus. When Jens touches the cactus, it almost looks like the result of the cactus poking them sort of has a lingering effect. So maybe if you run into a fancy cactus or get hit by a needle that it shoots out, it would poke you multiple times if you touch it or get hit by it. But if you get hit by a fancy cactus needle, you could even drop an item each time it pokes you, furthering the mechanic of vultures being drawn to loot. They don't call it the Badlands for their good manners, remember? Some people also pointed out to me that what I thought were cactus flowers might actually be cactus fruit. So I decided to keep some of the flowers since I did like the look of that, but I still added some cactus fruits, and that's what this is here. Perhaps trying to grab one of the cactus fruits would also cause the fancy cactus to shoot spikes at you. But if you used a pair of shears on the cactus fruit, you could successfully obtain it without any trouble. And sure, you could use it as a food source, but I have a bit more to say about the cactus fruit later on. So now let's take a look at the concept of the vulture. I've actually been thinking about how the vulture could actually be useful in simple early game fast travel, and here's how. So this here is what I'm calling the treasure glove, and it can only be found through archaeology, making this a very unique item. I've encased it in terracotta to hint at it being found in a tougher block that you would need to use the amethyst chisel to retrieve. The amethyst chisel is a concept item from my Minecraft archaeology concept, which is my previous video, which you can watch here by clicking the info card or the link in the description. You may also notice different mineral types being displayed here with the treasure glove, and I'll talk about why that is in a bit. Now, the treasure glove is used for securely locking a mineral in place on top of the glove, and usually the treasure glove would be found with an empty mineral slot and equipped like this. Now, this concept is going to need some balancing to make sure it's not too overpowered, but first I'll explain. So what would this treasure glove do? Well, we all know that the vultures are drawn to shiny loot, so basically you would want to place the treasure glove on the ground and wait for the vulture to perch on it. You would then quickly run up to the vulture, and in doing so would make the vulture fly away with your treasure glove. And if you timed it right and successfully equipped the treasure glove before the vulture flew off, it would take you up with it. And because that vulture really wants that shiny diamond, it's not going to let go. But over time it will begin to glide back down, and once you've reached the ground, the vulture will fly off. But you'll still have your treasure glove, and you'll have traveled a good distance. Now, the actual distance that the vulture could take you is certainly a tricky one to solve, because this is meant to be a method of early game fast travel, like I said. It's not at all meant to be better than the elytra, but we can just say that the vulture would fly you a far enough distance that it would still be worth using. I'd also like to mention that you wouldn't be able to control the direction that the vulture was going. You could only choose the direction that you want it to take you by facing the direction that you want it to go when you place the treasure glove on the ground. And my next idea is to balance the treasure glove a bit more. And that is, after about 4 uses of the vulture fast travel method, the mineral will break and you'll need to replace it with another singular mineral. So the fact that there's a bit of risk and reward, you need to pick a predetermined direction to go that isn't controllable, and you need to pay a bit of a fee to use the vulture fast travel express. I feel like these concepts for the treasure glove make it a fun and balanced method of early game fast travel. Now let's take another look at the cactus fruit. In this concept, maybe the vulture actually really likes the cactus fruit but just doesn't know it, because it's never eaten one as a result of the spikes on the cactus fruit. Maybe you could even tame the vulture with the sheared cactus fruit, and in doing so would allow you to simply fly up with the vulture without needing to sneak up on it. And the way that I'm imagining people using a tame vulture might be for a simple traveling method between bases. I'm also thinking that the fancy cactus could almost be used as a landing location for the vulture for each location that it goes. Almost like a spot that your feathery friend could relax. Maybe if you tame a vulture, then you could control its direction. I feel like these concepts make the vulture a fun mob type and gives you incentive to take care of your feathery friends. Now, I'd also like to introduce the concept of using other minerals instead of diamonds with the treasure glove. My idea behind this concept is that the vulture's flying will behave differently depending on the type of mineral that you've added to the treasure glove, basically displaying how much the vulture wants that mineral, by how far, how fast, and how high the vulture will go before dropping you off. So I'm thinking because amethyst geodes are located deep underneath the ground, we could flip that and the vulture could take you very high up into the air before gliding back down. This could be very useful if you have a sky base that the vulture could fly you right up to. Possibly diamond could have the vulture fly you fast and far away, while gold could allow the vulture to fly you a shorter distance at a slower pace because it's more common. And maybe an emerald would allow the vulture to take you high up into the air, but not as high as amethyst. Each mineral could have its own unique purpose and situational use. I hope everybody likes the new sound quality. I don't know if you can hear a little bit of background noise, but it kind of reminds me of like nice trees in the wind. It's kind of a nice sound.